Hi everyone, and welcome back. Wherever you are tonight, whether you're lying in bed and letting sleep take its slow approach, or maybe you're at work, letting something calm play in the background while you get things done, or perhaps you're out in the gentle chaos of holiday shopping, trying to find that last Christmas gift, thank you for being here. If our stories help you relax, or if you simply enjoy learning something new in the quiet hours of the evening, please take a second to give this video a like, and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps a lot more than you might think. And if you'd like, let us know in the comments where you're listening from. It's always wonderful to see how far our little bedtime village reaches. Now, take a deep breath. Let the world slow down for a while. Dim the lights if you can, or just close your eyes, and let me take you somewhere far away. Tonight we travel back through the centuries, into a world where winter was not something to enjoy, but something to survive. We slip quietly through the creaking wooden gates of a medieval village, the air sharp and cold enough to sting your lungs, your breath rising in soft silver clouds beneath a pale moon. Snow crunches underfoot as you follow a narrow path between cottages, leaning close together as if whispering to one another against the cold. Smoke curls from crooked chimneys, promising warmth inside, though not much comfort. The fields beyond are buried in frost, the rivers still, the night heavy with silence, except for the faraway bark of a restless dog and the creak of wood under snow. Already you can feel the truth of this place, that life here depends entirely on what was gathered, salted, dried, or hidden away months ago before the first frost fell. And as we step closer to one of those cottages, where a faint glow flickers through the small window, you begin to realize something. Winter in the Middle Ages wasn't just a season, it was a test. You push the small wooden door open and step into the dim interior of a peasant's home, the air thick with the scent of smoke and damp straw, and for a moment you just stand there, blinking as your eyes adjust to the flickering firelight. The room is small, low-ceilinged, every surface touched by time and use, the beams darkened by soot, the floor packed earth worn smooth by bare feet. A family sits gathered close to the hearth, faces turned toward the flame, as if worshipping its fragile glow. The fire burns low, conserving precious wood. On the table between them rests a single round loaf of bread, dark, dense, and heavy. Its crust is cracked like old stone, the color of bark, and when the father presses his knife into it, it creaks faintly, as though protesting the effort. This bread, humble and dark, is not just food, it is their lifeline through the frozen months. Made from rye, barley, or oats ground together into a coarse meal, it is baked dense and hard so it will last, so it will not mold or crumble too quickly in the damp. In rare years, when the harvest has been kind and the Lord's tax is light, a small handful of wheat might be mixed in, but for most families wheat is a dream, a grain that belongs to monasteries and nobles. The father slices the loaf slowly, deliberately, counting each piece. No crumb is wasted. The knife's dull edge drags through the thick crust, and each slice falls with a muted thud onto the wooden board. Around him, the family waits in silence, not with impatience but with ritual. For them, bread is not casual, not taken for granted. It is the measure of survival itself. Historians tell us that in medieval Europe, peasants drew nearly 3/4 of their daily calories from grains. Bread, porridge, and ale weren't side dishes. They were the core of existence. Meat was rare, vegetables precious, and anything sweet a fantasy. The bread you see here, heavy, sour, and dark, was both a comfort and a constant reminder of how narrow the margin of life could be. The mother passes each piece to the children. They eat slowly, chewing the dense crumb that fills the mouth with a flavor earthy and faintly bitter. To modern tongues it might seem unpleasant, but for them it is familiar, warm, solid, real. Around the edges of the loaf, the crust is almost stone hard, and sometimes they soften it in ale or stew, letting it absorb what little liquid the meal can spare. In the corner, near the ladder that leads up to the loft, a small chest sits latched tight. Inside it, wrapped in cloth, are the family's stores. Another loaf, perhaps two, kept for the coming days. There's always the quiet fear that it will not be enough, that the flour will run out before the snow melts. The youngest child cradles his slice with both hands as though it were gold. The father eats more slowly, his eyes on the fire, his thoughts somewhere deeper. Each bite he takes is measured against the days to come. You tear off a piece for yourself, the crust rough against your fingers, and taste what survival feels like. It's heavy on the tongue, but after a few moments, there's a strange satisfaction to it, a groundedness, a connection to the soil and the hands that shaped it. Bread, in this world, is more than sustenance. It is time made visible. It tells the story of every field sown, every storm endured, every hour bent over a grindstone. And though it seems humble, every crumb carries the weight of hope. At the far end of the table, the mother adds a small ladle of thin porridge to each bowl, a mixture of oats and water, maybe a pinch of salt if they've managed to keep any from the last trade at market. The steam curls upward, fragrant with smoke rather than spice. Still, it fills the air with warmth, and the sound of spoons scraping gently against wood becomes almost soothing, a rhythm older than memory. You notice how the family eats together, not hurried, not greedy. It is slow, deliberate, grateful. The fire crackles softly. The children's eyelids droop. The father stares into the embers as if reading some silent message there, something that promises the frost will pass and the fields will bloom again. Outside, the wind hums faintly against the thatched roof. Inside, the quiet of the meal becomes a lullaby, the steady breathing of people who have done this night after night, generation after generation. You lean back, your body warmed by the hearth, and you realize that this bread, so plain and unadorned, has carried entire civilizations through winters far harsher than this one. It is the thread that ties hunger to hope, effort to endurance, earth to body, and as you close your eyes for a moment, the scent of smoke and rye fading into the rhythm of your breath, you understand this was not just dinner. This was faith made tangible. The next morning comes slowly, as though even the sun is hesitant to rise. Pale light filters through the cracks in the shutters, revealing a room still thick with the chill of the night before. The hearth smoulders faintly, sending up thin trails of smoke that twist toward the rafters where herbs and bits of drying meat hang like the relics of better months. The mother is already awake, moving quietly so as not to wake the children. She stirs the ashes with a stick, coaxing the coals back to life, and soon the faint hiss of a pot touching the metal hook fills the air. Inside it, oats, water, and nothing else. It is breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner too. The father rises from his straw mattress, rubbing his hands together for warmth. He glances toward the pot, not in anticipation but in calculation. How much grain is left? How many mornings can they stretch it? The answer, always, lives somewhere between hope and worry. You sit near the hearth, the air smelling faintly of smoke and wet wool, and watch as the porridge thickens. Its colour is dull grey, its texture uneven, dotted with bits of husk. The smell isn't sweet or rich but earthy and faintly sour, the smell of necessity, not indulgence. The mother ladles a portion into each wooden bowl. The father adds a splash of thin ale from a small jug to cool it down, the liquid foaming faintly before settling into the grain. It's a strange thought that even the children drink ale, but in this world water is a danger. Wells are shallow, rivers polluted with waste. Boiled and fermented, ale becomes the safer choice, and though it's weak and sour, it sustains life far better than the streams outside. The youngest boy dips his spoon carefully, blowing on each bite before it touches his lips. The eldest eats in silence, methodically. There are no words exchanged, only the soft scrape of spoons, the low pop of the fire, the faint rustle of wind beyond the door. You taste it too, warm, heavy, filling in a quiet way. It has no sweetness, no spice, only the weight of the grain itself. Yet after a few spoonfuls, you can feel its purpose. It steadies you, it anchors you. It's not food to enjoy, it's food to endure. Historians say that porridge and pottage formed the backbone of medieval peasant diets. Sometimes they were flavoured with beans or peas, sometimes with bits of meat or herbs if fortune allowed, but most days it was this: grain and water, maybe a pinch of salt. In the corner, the grandmother murmurs something under her breath as she sprinkles a dried sprig of thyme into the pot, the herb crackling softly on contact. She insists it keeps away fevers and bad luck. No one argues with her. In times when medicine is scarce and sickness can sweep through a village faster than the wind, belief itself becomes a cure. The steam fills the room, curling around the beams, softening the air. The fire's glow catches on the family's faces, tired, weathered, but content for the moment. Hunger may return tomorrow, but for now there is warmth, there is food, and there is silence. When the bowls are empty, the father wipes the last traces of porridge with a scrap of bread, unwilling to let a single grain go to waste. The mother rinses the pot with a splash of ale, saving the water for washing. Outside, snow begins to fall again, thick and steady, layering the world in quiet white. You follow the father as he steps outside, his breath rising like smoke, the sky above a dull sheet of grey. He carries a wooden bucket to the well, breaking the thin film of ice that's formed overnight. The water below glints darkly, almost black. He hesitates for a moment, then lowers the bucket slowly. Even now he will not drink it raw. Back inside, the children are laughing softly as their mother hands them each a small cup of ale, weak, watered down, but still precious. It warms their bellies just enough to keep the cold from biting too deep. It might seem strange to modern eyes, but in this village, ale is more than drink. It is safety. The grains used to brew it are the same ones that fill their bowls. The yeast and fermentation transform danger into life. It is nourishment, hygiene, and ritual all in one. As the family gathers again by the fire, the jug of ale is passed from hand to hand. The taste is faintly sour, slightly smoky from the wooden barrels. You sip it, and feel the same gentle warmth they do. Not intoxication, but comfort. The kind that comes from knowing the world outside is bitterly cold, yet inside the fire still burns. And as the snow drifts past the window, you realize that in a time when luxury was unknown, comfort was not found in sweetness or abundance. It lived in the small things, the warmth of the hearth, the sound of spoons against bowls, the taste of grain and smoke shared between those who endured winter side by side. The ale runs out before long, but the laughter lingers. The children press close to their mother, and she hums softly, a tune with no words, just rhythm and memory. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the slow, steady pulse of their world, hard, yes, but full of quiet strength. By the next evening, the snow has deepened, soft and relentless, muffling every sound beyond the walls. The world outside has become a blur of white and grey, yet the small cottage glows like an ember in the dark, a fragile defiance against winter's silence. Inside, the air is heavy with the smell of wood smoke and something faintly green, sharp, and earthy. A pot simmers gently over the fire, its surface rippling as bubbles rise and burst. You lean closer and see what floats within: turnips, leeks, and slivers of cabbage, pale and soft, their colours faded but still holding the memory of the soil they came from. This is the evening meal, vegetable pottage, humble and enduring. It might not look like much, but in a world where survival depends on every root pulled from the earth, each piece floating in that pot is a small victory. The mother stirs slowly with a long wooden spoon, her motions unhurried, almost reverent. These vegetables have been waiting since autumn, stored carefully under straw and earth, hidden in pits dug deep to escape the frost. The family unearthed them only this morning, brushing away the frozen dirt with stiff fingers, their breath clouding in the air as they worked. You imagine the scene, the father kneeling in the snow, scraping aside straw to reveal the dull green of cabbages, and the pale white of leeks, each one still crisp despite the cold. The earth is both their enemy and their ally. It takes their warmth but guards their food. Without these buried treasures, winter would be far longer and far crueler. Historians still debate how varied a peasant's diet truly was in the depths of winter. Some say it was monotonous, reduced to little more than bread and gruel, while others argue that peasants managed to preserve surprising diversity: turnips, beans, onions, garlic and hardy herbs, each with its own small role in keeping life going. The truth, like the stew, is probably somewhere in between. The mother tastes the broth and adds a pinch of dried parsley from a small cloth pouch. The smell sharpens instantly, transforming the thin soup into something fragrant, alive. Even the children notice, leaning forward, watching as the steam fills the room with its soft herbal warmth. In a world without spices, herbs are the closest thing to luxury, and each handful is precious. The grandmother, sitting by the fire, nods approvingly. She tells the children in a low voice that parsley keeps away winter sickness, that thyme guards the heart, that rosemary drives out evil spirits hiding in the corners of the room. The little ones listen wide-eyed, and though no one knows how much truth there is in the old tales, belief itself seems to make the meal taste better. The father lifts the lid of a small wooden box on the shelf. Inside are a few shriveled onions and a rope of garlic bulbs, their papery skins golden in the firelight. He selects one and slices it carefully, the knife dull but practiced, adding the pieces to the pot. The scent fills the cottage immediately, pungent and comforting. Garlic and onion were medicine as much as food. Chronicles tell us that peasants hung them near doors and windows, convinced they could ward off both sickness and spirits. To us it might sound like superstition, but in the bitter months when fevers spread easily and cures were rare, small acts of faith offered something science could not. Hope. The family gathers now, bowls ready, hands warmed by the rising steam. The stew is thin, but it carries depth. The taste of the earth, the faint sweetness of leeks, the hint of herbs, and the smoky undertone from the fire. The children chew slowly, savouring each bite as though it were something grander. You can see the way their faces soften, shoulders relax, laughter returns. You dip your spoon and taste the broth yourself. It's not rich or complex, but it has a quiet satisfaction to it, a flavour that feels like endurance itself, simple, ancient and kind. The grandmother murmurs a prayer before finishing her bowl. The fire pops, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney, and for a moment the room feels brighter, warmer, almost festive. After the meal, the mother hangs what remains of the leeks and onions near the hearth to dry. They will last a few more weeks if fortune allows. Outside, the snow continues to fall, but inside there is colour, scent and life, a reminder that the earth, even sleeping, still gives. In a world without sugar, without spice, without comfort beyond the circle of firelight, it's these small flavours that keep spirits alive. The taste of a leek, the smell of garlic, the green flicker of parsley in a grey season, they are proof that even the poorest table can hold warmth and grace. And as you settle beside the hearth, your eyes heavy, the rhythm of the fire soft in your ears, you realize that food here is more than survival. It is memory. It is connection. It is faith that tomorrow, when the snow lies deeper and the cold presses harder, there will still be something to eat, something to share, something to keep the darkness at bay. By the time another week passes, the snow outside has hardened into a glittering shell, crisp underfoot and blinding under the pale sun. The village sleeps early now. Daylight fades too fast, and the cold turns sharper with every night. Inside one cottage, though, the air is heavy and rich, carrying a scent you haven't yet encountered here, a deep, smoky sweetness that clings to the rafters and fills your lungs. It is the smell of meat. You step closer to the hearth and look upward. Hanging from wooden beams are long, dark strips of pork and beef, their surfaces glistening faintly, preserved through smoke and salt. They sway slightly in the draught like ancient relics of plenty. Beneath them, a woman tends to a pot where a small portion simmers in broth, the fat bubbling to the surface in thin golden circles. In the world of medieval peasants, this smell is rare. It is celebration and reassurance in equal measure. Meat means that something went right in the months before, that the pig fattened properly on acorns, that the slaughter went cleanly, that the salt barrel did not run dry. Historians write that autumn slaughter was a kind of sacred season in peasant life, grim, yes, but necessary. When the air cooled and flies disappeared, families came together to butcher their animals before winter. Every part was used, flesh salted or smoked, bones boiled for broth, intestines turned to sausage skins, fat rendered down into lard. There was no waste, no luxury, only preservation. The woman ladles a spoonful of stew into a wooden bowl and sets it before her children. The pieces of meat are few, thin and sinewy, but they flavour the broth, give it colour, give it heart. Even a small scrap transforms the whole meal. You watch the father cut another sliver from a hanging strip. He moves carefully, reverently, aware that every ounce of this smoked treasure must last for weeks. Salted meat might seem unappeasing to modern tongues, chewy, briny, even bitter, but here it carries the taste of security. Outside you can still hear faint laughter drifting from another cottage down the lane. There, perhaps, another family celebrates the same ritual. In many villages, the slaughter of a pig was both work and festival. Neighbours helped each other, one man with the knife, another with the barrels of brine, women preparing herbs and smoke fires, children gathering scraps for stew. The first meal of the slaughter was always shared, fresh meat eaten immediately before the rest was stored. It was one of the few times of the year when even the poorest tasted abundance. You can picture it. The courtyard slick with snow, breath rising in clouds, voices carrying on the cold air. There is singing, maybe even a little ale poured to mark the day. It is not joy in the modern sense, but gratitude that they will not starve. Inside the cottage, the pot bubbles softly. The broth has turned cloudy, rich with fat. The smell makes the air thick and comforting. The children dip chunks of bread into it, their faces glowing in the orange firelight. You follow their example. The taste is strong, salty, smoky, faintly metallic, but satisfying in a way that speaks directly to something ancient. The mother explains that they will stretch the rest of the meat for months. Some will be boiled with cabbage, some ground into small pies at Christmas time, some melted into grease for cooking. The bones will become soup. The head will be turned into pudding. Even the skin will be boiled for fat. Nothing is wasted, not even the bristles, which the father saves to make brushes. You glance around and notice a large clay jar near the wall, half filled with pale white lard. It looks plain, almost dull, but here it is as precious as silver. Lard will fry vegetables, soften bread, and warm the body when other fats are gone. It will also light lamps and seal jars of cheese. In a world where every calorie counts, fat is the truest form of wealth. Scholars still argue how often peasants actually ate meat. Some say only a handful of times per month. Others believe small scraps found their way into daily meals more often, flavouring rather than feeding. The archaeological record shows bones in every midden heap, but whether they belong to the rich or the poor is harder to tell. The truth, as always, lies between necessity and luck. The father now leans back, wiping his hands on his tunic. The family has eaten. The children's faces are warm and pink, their stomachs full. The pot is nearly empty, but what remains, the thin broth, the smell in the air, the grease on the wooden spoons, feels like fortune. You sit with them for a while, watching the smoke twist slowly toward the roof beams, curling around the hanging meat like a protective charm. In many villages it was believed that the smoke itself preserved not just the meat but the home, that evil spirits disliked its scent. So the hearth never went cold even through the night. The grandmother hums softly, stirring the coals, and the sound mingles with the faint hiss of fat dripping into the fire. The light flickers on her lined face, and you realize this ritual of cutting, curing, sharing, and saving has been performed for hundreds of winters before, and will be for hundreds more after. Meat in this world is not feast. It is memory, effort, and luck crystallized into flavor. It carries the weight of life and death, the turning of seasons, the endless rhythm of need and gratitude. As you rise to leave, you look once more at the strips hanging from the rafters. The smoke has darkened them to a rich brown, almost black. They gleam faintly in the firelight, like relics of something holy, and in a way, they are. Because here, in this quiet corner of the frozen world, survival smells like salt and smoke, and faith tastes like stew. The wind outside howls now, rising and falling like the voice of some unseen spirit circling the village. It rattles the shutters, hums through the thatch, and carries with it the cry of distant crows. You pull your cloak tighter, following the faint glow of a lantern swaying ahead. The man who carries it moves with practiced steps, quiet and sure, his boots leaving deep prints in the snow. You realize he is guiding you toward the forest, the dark edge of the world where laws bend and hunger speaks louder than fear. In winter, the forest becomes both a sanctuary and a crime. By law, it belongs to the lord. Its deer and boar are royal property, its trees counted and taxed. But the snow makes rules feel different, thinner somehow, easier to slip through. When the stores grow light and bellies grow empty, men turn to the woods, trusting the silence to keep their secrets. You stop near the tree line. The lantern's flame flickers as the man kneels, brushing away the snow to reveal a small loop of twine, a snare, simple and clever, hidden under a dusting of frost. Beside him stands a boy no older than 12, watching closely, his breath trembling in the cold. The man checks the trap with calloused hands. It's empty. He nods once and moves on. Then, a few paces ahead, another loop. This one tight around a small, limp body. A hair. The boy's face changes instantly, lighting with a quiet joy that no feast could match. The man mutters a soft prayer, thanking the woods for their mercy, and slips the rabbit into a cloth bag. His movements are gentle, almost reverent, as though he knows the forest is listening. Poaching, they call it, stealing the king's meat, but in truth it is only life insisting on itself. Records from medieval England and France tell of peasants whipped or fined for setting snares, yet the same records hint that such acts were common, tolerated, even ignored when the winters were harsh enough. The law was written on parchment. Hunger was carved into bone. You follow them deeper, the snow crunching faintly underfoot. Branches arch overhead, dusted with frost that sparkles in the moonlight. Every breath you take feels sharp, almost metallic. The man stops again, crouches near a patch of disturbed snow and digs with his hands. When he rises, he holds a second prize, a small bird, maybe a thrush, caught in a hidden loop of horsehair. The boy stares in awe. The man only smiles faintly, slipping it into the same bag. Enough for stew, he whispers. Later, back in the village, the cottage glows faintly through the fog of smoke and frost. Inside, the family gathers once more. The air smells of broth, earthy and rich. The rabbit's skin hangs near the door, drying for future use. The meat itself has been chopped and dropped into a pot with barley and leeks. The broth simmers, darkening to the colour of old bronze. The mother stirs slowly, humming to herself. The children hover close, wide-eyed. They all know this meal could not be spoken of beyond their walls, but for now it is theirs, and the air carries that quiet, secret happiness, known only to those who've stolen a little warmth from a cold world. You sit among them as the bowls are passed around. The first sip surprises you. It's thin, yes, but full of depth. The faint sweetness of meat, the bite of herbs, the smoky whisper from the fire. It tastes like life rediscovered. The father eats in silence, his eyes darting once toward the shuttered window, as though afraid the forest itself might betray him. And yet, around the table, something changes. The children laugh. The mother smiles, briefly, at the way the little one slurps from his bowl. Even the father's shoulders ease. Hunger is quiet tonight. Historians write of the complex laws that once bound the woods, royal forests, deer parks, gamekeepers who patrolled with authority. But here, in this tiny cottage, those laws feel impossibly distant. The forest does not care who owns it. It only gives to those brave enough to take what they need. You remember a curious tale whispered in some half-forgotten chronicle, that peasants believed certain animals were protected by spirits, that to hunt them without offering a prayer was to invite misfortune. So every hunter, before laying his trap, would whisper to the trees, offering thanks, sometimes even leaving a small piece of bread near the roots as payment. Perhaps it was superstition, or perhaps it was something deeper, a way of keeping balance between hunger and guilt. The pot is nearly empty now. The last of the broth is poured into cups, and the family lingers by the fire, sated and quiet. The rabbit's bones, cleaned and pale, clatter softly in a small bowl. They will be boiled again tomorrow to make more soup. Nothing is wasted. You glance at the boy. His eyes are half closed, his head resting on his mother's lap. He will remember tonight. The warmth, the full belly, the rare taste of meat. And someday he will teach his own child how to tie a snare and whisper to the forest before setting it. Outside, the snow has eased. The world is still. The forest stands silent under the moonlight, keeping its secrets well. And as you sit there, drowsy in the glow of the fire, you understand the quiet defiance of these people. They live on the edge of power and punishment, yet their hands still find ways to turn hunger into hope. The law of the Lord ends at the village gate, but the law of the forest, the one written in instinct and need, has no borders. You close your eyes, the warmth of stew lingering on your tongue, and for a moment you can almost hear the forest breathing, calm and endless, watching over those who dare to survive. By the time you reach the river, dawn has barely broken. The light is pale and thin, seeping weakly through a sky the color of ash. The air is so cold that your breath hangs heavy, refusing to fade, and the silence feels almost holy, broken only by the distant creak of ice, shifting in slow, invisible motion. The water here is frozen solid, a mirror of dull grey stretching into the fog, yet beneath it life still stirs. 2 men are already at work by the bank, their cloaks stiff with frost, their movements calm and measured. They carry no grand tools, no heavy nets, only a simple iron-tipped pole, a handmade net, and the quiet patience of people who have done this all their lives. One kneels, striking the ice with the pole until a hollow sound echoes back, then chips at it carefully, splintering the frozen surface into shards that scatter like glass. A small black pool opens in the white world, and immediately a curl of mist rises from it, whispering into the cold air. This is winter fishing, a ritual as old as hunger itself. In the Middle Ages, fish were not only food, they were obedience. The church forbade the eating of meat on many days of the year, Fridays, Lent, holy vigils, and so the rivers, ponds and streams became sacred larders. For peasants, catching fish was not just a matter of survival, but also of faith. To eat fish was to keep the soul in good standing while keeping the body alive. The first man lowers his net into the dark water, moving it back and forth with slow grace, while the second mutters a prayer, something soft and rhythmic about fortune and forgiveness. They know that to fish without prayer invites poor luck. It's half superstition, half hope. But here those are often the same thing. Then a flicker, barely a tremor on the water's skin. The man's arms tense, his pole jerks upward, and from the hole he pulls a writhing shape, a small eel slick and silver in the dawn light. The creature twists violently, droplets freezing mid-air before they fall. The boy who has followed them gasps, and the older man laughs quietly, holding up the catch as though it were gold. Eels, carp, pike, these were the lifeblood of medieval winters, abundant, oily, rich in fat and energy. Monasteries and estates kept ponds stocked for fasting seasons, and even humble villagers knew the best bends in a stream, or the quiet ponds beneath mill wheels where fish slept through the cold. Chroniclers tell us that in some regions, peasants paid their rents in eels, and during famine years they were often the only reliable protein left. The fish are laid gently into a basket lined with straw to keep them from freezing solid. The air smells faintly metallic now, sharp with river mud. The men do not linger. They make another hole a few feet away and start again. The boy peers into the black water, his face mirrored faintly in the surface, and for a moment it seems as if the ice separates two worlds, one of stillness above and one of motion beneath. Later, in the warmth of the cottage, the catch becomes supper. The mother cleans the fish with a knife that has seen a lifetime of winters, scraping scales into a bowl to be thrown to the chickens. The flesh is pale, translucent, streaked with the faint shimmer of oil. The smell fills the small room, earthy, pungent, slightly sweet. In a clay pot, she boils the fish with leeks and barley. The broth darkens to a soft golden color, cloudy from the fat. The steam rises, carrying with it the scent of the river itself, the cold, the mud, the wildness. The family gathers close, bowls in their hands. Each spoonful brings warmth, strength, and a strange kind of peace. You sip it too, and it surprises you. The flavor is not delicate, but it feels alive, rich, oily, faintly smoky from the fire. The broth clings to your lips, filling your chest with heat. You can taste the world in it. The frost, the water, the hands that caught it. Historians still argue about how accessible fish really were to peasants. Some claim that rivers were fiercely guarded by lords, that nets were taxed and fishing forbidden outside specific days. Others point to accounts and archaeological finds showing fish bones in almost every rural midden, suggesting that even under watchful eyes, villagers found ways to claim the river's bounty. Laws, after all, can't watch every stream. A curious superstition lingers, too. Many believed fish pulled from under ice carried blessings, that eating them kept famine and illness at bay. Some even hung dried fish above the hearth as charms, their glistening bodies warding off misfortune. Whether such acts worked hardly mattered. The belief itself warmed the heart in a way food alone could not. As the family eats, the mother lifts a small piece of eel and offers it to the boy. He accepts it carefully, eyes wide, and chews in silence. When he swallows, his face breaks into a shy smile. It's more than just taste. It's pride. He knows he helped bring that food to the table, that he was part of the day's quiet triumph. Outside, the frozen river glimmers under the rising moon. Beneath its shell, life continues unseen, patient and constant, waiting for spring. You think of how the people here mirror that rhythm, frozen on the surface, yet always moving, always enduring, beneath the weight of cold and time. You lean back near the hearth, the last of the fish stew still warm in your belly, and listen to the slow breathing of the family around you. The fire hums softly, the wind sighs through the roof, and you realize that this is how survival sounds, not desperate or loud, but steady, calm, and faithful. By now, the snow outside has settled into quiet permanence. The paths between cottages are smooth and pale, and each roof wears a heavy white crown that gleams faintly in the moonlight. Inside the homes, the fires burn low, and the air smells of smoke, wool, and something faintly sour, an old living scent that hints at milk turned to magic. You follow that scent into a small cottage near the edge of the village, where the faint sound of dripping echoes against clay walls. In the corner sits a shelf lined with small wheels of cheese, some wrapped in cloth, some resting bare upon wooden boards. Their surfaces are uneven, the colours mottled shades of ivory and gold. It takes a moment to realize that this modest collection is one of the family's greatest treasures. The mother greets you with a tired smile and wipes her hands on her apron. She has been tending the cheese all morning, turning each wheel so it dries evenly, checking for mold, rubbing salt into the rinds where cracks begin to form. The work is slow, patient, the kind of labor that never truly ends, but it's the only way to keep milk alive when cows no longer give it freely. You glance toward the window. The world outside is hard and white. The cows stand in their small pen, huddled close, their breath rising like steam. In the coldest months, their milk dwindles, sometimes disappearing entirely. What little they do give must be saved, not drunk fresh, but transformed. So here, in the dim warmth of the cottage, milk becomes permanence. Milk becomes cheese. The process seems simple, yet it borders on alchemy. Warm the milk near the hearth. Stir in rennet, watch as it curdles and separates into soft white curds and pale golden whey. Strain the curds through cloth. Press them into molds. Salt them. Dry them. Wait. The whey is poured into a jug, later used for cooking or feeding the pigs. Nothing is wasted, not even the leftovers of the miracle. The mother shows you a small round she made just 3 days ago. It's soft and pliant still, not yet ready. This one, she says softly, will be for spring. Her voice carries both pride and worry. Cheese is patience made visible. It requires faith that the world will still be here when the wheel is finally cut open. Historians note that medieval peasants depended heavily on dairy whenever they could get it. Cheese, butter, and curds were not luxuries but necessities, ways to capture the fleeting abundance of summer and stretch it across the hungry months. Goats and sheep were often more reliable than cows, hardier, less demanding, and their milk kept families fed when nothing else remained. You sit by the fire as she slices a thin wedge from an older wheel, one aged long enough that its surface cracks slightly beneath the knife. The cheese is firm and pale, its smell sharp but clean. She sets the slice on a piece of bread and offers it to you. You take a bite. The flavor surprises you. It's dry at first, salty, then suddenly rich and nutty, the taste of grass and sunlight remembered through months of darkness. It lingers on the tongue, slow and warm. You understand instantly why this is a prize. In a world of thin gruels and coarse bread, cheese is comfort, indulgence, and energy all at once. The children eat theirs carefully, savouring each mouthful as though it were honey. The father takes only a sliver, leaving the rest for them. The cow will not give much more, he says, half to himself. His words hang in the smoky air, soft but heavy. In the corner of the room, smaller rounds rest under straw. Some are dusted with ash to preserve them, others wrapped in nettles to keep mold away. A few have been rubbed with herbs, thyme, and sage, giving off a faint scent of summer fields. These details, you realize, are both practical and sacred. They are acts of remembrance, ways of keeping warmth alive in a frozen world. Scholars still debate how much milk and cheese peasants truly consumed. Some claim most of it went to the lords as rent or tithe. Others argue that peasants, especially those who owned goats, managed to keep enough for themselves. The truth likely varies from valley to valley, from year to year, but no chronicler could ever capture the expression on a child's face as he bites into a piece of cheese after weeks of nothing but grain. The grandmother, sitting near the hearth, murmurs an old belief: cheese made under a new moon keeps longer, she says. But cheese cut on a Sunday will spoil. The family nods, not in fear, but in respect. These sayings are not science, but tradition. In a world so fragile, even small rituals lend courage. You lean back, the taste still on your tongue, and think of what this cottage represents. A small miracle repeated endlessly across Europe. Unseen, uncelebrated, but vital. It's easy to overlook cheese, to think of it as humble, ordinary. But here, in this quiet place, it is survival in solid form. As the family finishes eating, the mother wraps the wheel again in cloth and places it gently back on the shelf. The fire crackles. The air smells faintly of milk and smoke. Outside, the snow falls silently. But inside there is warmth, there is sustenance, there is time itself preserved in the simplest form imaginable. And as you drift closer to sleep, listening to the faint creak of the beams and the soft rustle of straw, you realize that this, more than anything else, is the secret of the medieval winter. Not conquest or abundance, but quiet endurance, built wheel by wheel, loaf by loaf, through the patience of those who believed that spring would come again. The next morning dawns blue and brittle, the kind of cold that bites before you even step outside. The village roosters do not crow. They huddle, feathers puffed against the frost, too wise to waste their breath. As you walk between the cottages, your boots crunch on the frozen earth, and thin smoke rises from chimneys in slow ribbons. curling into the pale sky. Somewhere close by, you hear a soft clucking, gentle, rhythmic, the sound of life persisting in miniature. You follow it to a small wooden coop behind one of the cottages. The door hangs crooked, patched with scraps of bark, but inside there's a faint glow of straw-coloured warmth. The air smells faintly of feathers, hay, and the faint sweetness of grain dust. A woman kneels there, her hands red with cold, moving with the calm precision of someone who has done this every morning since the first frost. She lifts the straw gently, searching with careful fingers, and there beneath the warmth of a hen's belly, she finds it. An egg, small, pale, fragile as glass, the surface faintly rough beneath her thumb, still warm from the hen's body. She holds it up toward the faint light slipping through the cracks, her face softening with quiet gratitude. In winter, a single egg is a gift, a bright, improbable miracle in a world of grey. Hens do not lay easily in the dark season. They need light, warmth, and feed, and most peasants have none to spare. Many stop laying altogether until spring, but when a bird does, the family treats the discovery with reverence. Some eggs are eaten that day, some set aside for feast days, and a few are even used as remedies or offerings. You watch as the woman carries the egg inside. The cottage is dim and smoky, the fire already burning low. Her children sit close to the hearth, rubbing their hands together for warmth. When she holds up the egg, their faces light up as though she were showing them treasure. The father laughs softly, a rare sound these days, and nods toward the pot on the fire. 2 eggs today, he says. Enough to share. She cracks them carefully, one at a time. The shells split with a delicate sound, the yolks glowing golden in the dim light as they slip into the bubbling broth. They swirl slowly, blending into the stew of barley and cabbage, turning the colour richer, the smell stronger, more alive. You sit with them as they eat. The broth is thicker now, silkier. The yolk has melted into it, coating the tongue with warmth and comfort. It's astonishing how something so small can change the character of an entire meal. The children slurp happily, their cheeks pink from the heat, their laughter soft and shy. In medieval Europe, eggs were precious beyond measure in winter. They were traded, offered as rent, blessed in churchyards at Easter. To eat one before spring was both luxury and luck. Some families saved the first egg of the new year and buried it beneath the doorway, believing it would protect the household from hunger until the next harvest. Others dyed eggs in faint plant colours, reds from beets, yellows from onion skins, long before the tradition became tied to Easter. Historians still argue how often peasants truly tasted eggs in the frozen months. Some say almost never, as they were too valuable to eat. Others note that small flocks of hens kept close to hearth fires might produce enough to sustain a family through the bleakest weeks. But all agree that each egg carried a kind of meaning, a quiet, glowing symbol of renewal, of life refusing to end. The grandmother finishes her bowl and mutters something about witches stealing hens' voices in winter, a superstition half warning, half comfort. The father smiles faintly and drops a small iron nail near the coop before dusk, just in case. These little charms seem silly to us now, but in the stillness of the medieval night, when every sound outside the wall could be a threat, small acts of faith kept fear at bay. After the meal, the mother wipes the pot clean and sets the eggshells on the windowsill. In some villages, people left the shells there to invite good fortune, believing that fairies or kind spirits might fill them with gifts before dawn. Whether true or not, the gesture feels right. The empty shells gleam faintly in the firelight, symbols of fullness already spent, of hope still fragile but unbroken. You watch as the family settles in for the night. The children curl beneath rough blankets, their stomachs full, their dreams surely golden like those yolks. The mother sits near the fire, mending a torn sleeve, the rhythmic sound of needle through fabric soft and steady. The father turns the last of the straw near the hearth, preparing a warm place for the hens to sleep. Outside, snow drifts against the door. Inside, life continues, small and steadfast. And as you listen to the faint clucking from the coop, muffled by the storm, you understand something simple and profound. Survival here is not built on grand gestures, but on fragile miracles. On one warm egg in a bed of straw, on one quiet hen still laying when all the world seems frozen, on a family that knows how to find joy in the smallest circle of gold. The days pass, and the cold grows deeper still. The air no longer moves. It hangs, heavy and blue, pressing silence into every crack of the village. Even the dogs sleep longer now, curled tight against the cold, but inside the cottages where the fires burn low and steady, another quiet ritual of survival takes place, one that glistens faintly in the firelight, pale and golden, soft as candle wax. It is the making and guarding of butter and lard. In one home you find the mother bent over a wooden churn. Her sleeves are rolled up, her breath misting in the air. The steady rhythm of her arms fills the room. A slow, patient thump, the sound of milk turning to gold. The churn creaks, the buttermilk sloshes faintly, and the faint scent of cream rises through the smoky air. It's a sound and smell so familiar that it hardly draws notice. Yet within it lies one of the oldest miracles of the village, the transformation of summer's abundance into winter's endurance. When the butter finally gathers, thick and solid, she scoops it out with practiced hands, pressing it into a round shape. Her fingers glisten with fat that will soon harden in the cold. She drops the leftover liquid, the thin, sour buttermilk, into a jug. Nothing is wasted. It will flavor tomorrow's porridge or mix with barley to make bread a little softer. On the table nearby, clay pots of pale lard sit sealed with cloth and twine. They look simple, almost dull, but here they are worth more than coins. That lard was rendered months ago when the pig was slaughtered. Every spoonful since has been measured carefully, saved for the most important meals. You dip your spoon into one of the jars. The fat is white, smooth and faintly translucent at the edges. It carries a faint, clean scent of salt and smoke. The father chuckles softly. That, he says, is what keeps the cold out. He is not wrong. In this season, fat is more than flavor. It is survival itself. Historians note that for medieval peasants, butter and lard provided the dense energy their bodies needed to endure endless labor and freezing nights. A spoonful stirred into a pot of oats turned thin gruel into sustenance. A smear of butter across dark bread turned monotony into something that felt almost like comfort. You watch as the mother takes a small piece of rye bread, hard and dark, and spreads a thin layer of butter over it. The warmth of the hearth softens it instantly. Glimmering in the light, she hands it to her youngest child, who bites into it with delight. The first true smile you've seen all day. Even the smallest taste of richness can lift spirits here. In the corner, the grandmother whispers an old saying, "Where butter melts, hunger melts too." Her voice carries the weight of centuries of countless winters endured through the same ritual. She goes on to tell a curious story, half belief and half memory, that some families long ago buried their butter in bogs to keep it safe through summer, where the cool earth preserved it for months, even years. When they unearthed it, the butter had turned darker, its flavor deep and strange, but it was still good, still life in edible form. The mother laughs softly. "We have no bogs here," she says. "Only patience." She takes another pot of lard and melts a spoonful into the evening stew. The fat hisses, spitting tiny sparks as it hits the iron pot. The smell rises immediately, warm, rich, almost sweet. Cabbage and onions soften in the heat, their edges browning slightly. The sound is mesmerizing, like rain against a roof, and the family gathers closer. The children watch with wide eyes, hypnotized by the bubbling. The aroma fills every corner, chasing away the sharp smell of frost that seeps through the walls. The stew, once watery and pale, now deepens to a creamy gold. The father dips a spoon and nods in approval. "That sip's better," he murmurs. "Now it feels like a meal." You taste it too. The flavor coats your tongue, simple but rich, the fat carrying the sweetness of the vegetables farther than water ever could. It feels like warmth made edible. Historians still debate whether peasants had much access to butter in winter. In some regions, lords claimed the best of the milk, leaving families to rely on lard alone. In others, especially in the north, cows and goats provided enough to sustain them, though never lavishly. What's certain is that without these fats, bodies weakened and cold crept deeper into bone and spirit alike. The grandmother stirs the pot once more, humming softly to herself. The tune is old and low, rising with the rhythm of the fire. When the stew is done, she ladles it carefully, wiping the rim of each bowl so nothing spills. The family eats slowly, savoring every mouthful. Each spoonful feels like a promise that even when the earth gives nothing, their own labor still provides. When the bowls are empty, the mother reseals the pots of lard and butter, tying them tight with string, hiding them away in the coolest corner of the house. They are not luxuries. They are insurance against the next storm, the next illness, the next long night. You look around the small room, the flicker of firelight on the beams, the quiet satisfaction on their faces, and you realize that this pale, humble fat is not just food. It is comfort itself, stored sunlight, the echo of summer made tangible. And as the fire dims and sleep begins to pull at your eyes, you think of how strange and beautiful it is that survival could be built from something so simple. Not gold, not glory, just a jar of white fat glowing softly in the dark. By the time the next storm comes, the village has grown quieter still. The wind sighs through the empty fields like a ghost searching for warmth, and snow drifts against the doors, rising inch by inch until even the sound of the world feels muffled. Inside, the hearth glows faintly, its light small but steady, and the family gathers close again, the fire's reflection flickering in their tired eyes. Tonight, the meal is already finished. The bowls are stacked neatly, the air smells faintly of smoke and boiled barley, but there is something new on the table, something golden, a small clay pot sealed with wax and tied with twine. The father sets it down carefully, almost reverently, and for a moment no one moves. Then, slowly the mother breaks the seal. The scent that fills the room is unlike anything else in winter. It is warm, sweet, alive. Honey, thick and glowing like melted sunlight, smooth as silk when the spoon dips into it. In this dim cottage, surrounded by snow and silence, the golden shimmer feels like a miracle, a glimpse of summer's memory trapped and waiting. The youngest child leans forward, eyes wide. The mother smiles and dips a wooden spoon into the honey, twisting it slowly, the viscous amber thread catching the firelight before it drips down into a bowl. The sound it makes is soft, a whisper, a promise. You can almost see it. 1,000 bees working under the bright sun months ago, carrying fragments of warmth in their tiny bodies, turning flowers into sweetness, light into survival. And now, long after the flowers have vanished, their work keeps this family's spirits from dimming. Honey is rare in this world, rarer still in winter. It was the only sweetener most peasants knew, long before sugar drifted across the oceans into Europe. To possess even a single jar was fortune. To open it in the coldest month, luxury. Some kept bees in woven skeps by their gardens. Others gathered honey from wild hives hidden in tree trunks. It was dangerous work. Stings, smoke, and fragile hands trembling as they reached for the combs. But the reward was worth every risk. The father dips a finger into the pot and holds it up for the children. They each taste, their faces lighting up in quiet astonishment. The sweetness seems to erase the cold itself. The grandmother laughs softly, saying, "It's like licking the sun." The phrase lingers in the air, tender and true. You take a taste as well. It coats your tongue slowly, thick and floral, as though the scent of summer meadows has come back to life just for this moment. The room seems brighter, the shadows gentler. Historians note that honey was more than food. It was medicine, offering both healing and hope. Mixed with herbs, it became salve for wounds, stirred into warm ale. It soothed sore throats, melted into milk. It calmed fevers. In some villages, a small spoonful was given to infants to keep them quiet through the night, and to the dying to ease their final sleep. Every drop was sacred. The family eats in silence, dipping bits of bread into the pot, savouring every trace. The golden light from the honey reflects on their faces, softening the lines of fatigue. Even the fire seems to burn brighter for a while, as if drawn to the sweetness. In the corner, the father sets aside what remains, barely half the pot. He seals it again, tight and careful, before placing it high on a shelf. For Easter, he says quietly. No one protests. Everyone knows that honey must be rationed like joy, too much at once, and you'll miss its warmth when you need it most. Outside, the wind moans against the shutters, carrying the sound of ice shifting on the river. But inside, time feels slower. The grandmother begins to hum a low tune, one that speaks of spring, of bees returning, of fields waking. The mother joins softly, her voice a fragile thread that binds the moment together. You close your eyes. The taste of honey lingers, golden and endless. It feels like a promise that this long winter will end, that the frozen world will bloom again, that sweetness can survive the cold. And as you drift towards sleep beside the fire, you understand the deeper truth of this night, that in every cottage, in every corner of every village, people have always fought the darkness the same way, not with strength or wealth, but with small, stubborn light, with bread, with warmth, with faith, and sometimes with a single spoonful of honey. The wind has softened now. It moves gently through the frozen hedges, whispering faintly against the thatch as though the world is catching its breath. The snow has stopped, leaving the village wrapped in stillness, but the air carries a quiet hunger, the kind that creeps in slowly once the salted meat and cheese begin to dwindle. It is in this season of nearly empty shelves that the peasants turn to their last hidden treasures, the small gifts of the forest, the forgotten sweetness of autumn preserved in secret places. You follow the father beyond the cottages, where the fields fade into trees. The branches here are bare and silvered with frost, their shadows long and thin across the snow. He carries a small woven basket, patched and mended a dozen times, and moves with the careful step of someone who knows exactly where to look. He kneels beside a mound of straw half buried under the snow, pulls it aside, and there it is, an old basket filled with hazelnuts, dry and pale, their shells smooth and cold. They've been waiting here since harvest, hidden from mice and damp earth, saved for just this moment when the pantry runs low. He smiles faintly, brushing the frost from their surfaces, and you can almost hear the small clack of shells shifting like coins. These are not luxuries. They are insurance. Each nut, each seed, each dried fruit tucked away in autumn carries the memory of sunlight, the flavour of warmth. The family gathers around him, helping scoop them into the basket, small hands working quickly despite the cold. The mother adds another treasure, a small sack of shriveled crab apples, their skins wrinkled, their colour deepened to a ruby brown. They smell faintly sweet, faintly sour, the scent of a lost season. Back inside the cottage, the air thickens again with smoke and warmth. The mother cracks the nuts one by one with the flat of a knife, the sound echoing softly through the room. The children pick at the kernels, laughing quietly when one shell refuses to break. Their laughter feels strange here, out of place in the long winter, but welcome, like sunlight through a crack in the door. The father tosses a few of the crushed nuts into the evening porridge, stirring slowly. The smell that rises is faintly rich, faintly sweet, a reminder that even the simplest meal can carry traces of comfort. Then, as if inspired by the scent, the mother adds slices of the dried crab apples, their edges curling as they meet the heat. The porridge thickens, turns golden at the edges, its steam filled with the ghost of autumn air. You taste it as they do. It is humble, yes, but alive. Grain and nut and fruit blending together into something more than sustenance. Each bite carries a faint crunch, a burst of flavour, a spark of memory. It is the taste of a time when fields were green and the sun lingered late in the sky. Historians tell us that peasants gathered nuts, berries, and fruits wherever they could. Hazelnuts from the woods, rose hips from the hedgerows, crab apples, sloes and hawthorn berries from the edges of fields. Some were eaten fresh, others dried or buried in pits under straw. Even acorns, bitter and hard, could be leached of their poison and ground into flour when nothing else remained. These humble things were not mere supplements. They were the bridge between hunger and hope. The grandmother, sitting by the hearth, cracks a walnut with a stone and smiles. "When you eat a nut," she says softly, "you eat the strength of the tree." The children nod, solemn and wide-eyed, as if she has just told them a secret spell, and in a way she has. There is a kind of magic in food that grows close to the earth, unnoticed by lords, unseen by chroniclers, but powerful enough to keep a family alive. As the evening wears on, the air fills with the smell of roasting nuts. The father holds a flat pan over the fire, shaking it gently, the faint hiss and pop of shells cracking, adding music to the night. The golden scent deepens, warm and nutty, filling every corner of the room. They eat slowly, savouring each piece, passing the bowl from hand to hand. The smallest child licks honey from his fingers, then presses a few crushed nuts into it, grinning as the sweetness sticks. The grandmother laughs softly, and for a moment the cottage feels brighter than it has in weeks. It's easy to forget, looking in from the outside, that survival is not just about enduring hunger. It's about remembering flavour. The taste of berries gathered months ago, the crunch of a hazelnut, the sharp tang of fruit that still holds a whisper of the sun. Without these small sparks, life would fade into grey sameness. But here, around this hearth, you see colour again. Gold, red, brown, the palette of autumn painted onto winter's canvas. Outside, the forest waits in silence, its branches heavy with frost. Beneath the snow, roots sleep and seeds lie patient, dreaming of spring. Inside, the family finishes their meal, full and warm, their laughter soft as falling ash. And as you sit with them, feeling the warmth of the fire on your face and the taste of roasted nuts still on your tongue, you understand something quiet and beautiful. That winter does not erase the world. It only tests how deeply we can remember it. You taste it too, and it's astonishing how little it takes. The broth is the same as before. Roots, grains, a scrap of meat, but the herbs make it new again. The thyme brightens the flavour, the sage deepens it, the garlic lingers faintly at the back of the tongue. It is the taste of life reclaiming colour. In the corner, the grandmother hangs a small bunch of rosemary over the door. To keep bad spirits from returning, she murmurs. The mother smiles at the gesture, though she's too tired to say whether she believes in it or not. Here, belief itself is a kind of medicine. It warms the heart the way food warms the body. Later, as the meal ends, the father brings out the last of the ale, cloudy, faintly sweet, weak now after so many batches. He pours it into wooden cups and raises his hand in a quiet toast. "To the herbs," he says, "and to the hands that kept them." They drink. The children giggle softly. The grandmother hums. The scent of rosemary and sage drifts upward, curling into the beams, mingling with the smoke. Outside, the snow begins to fall again. Not hard this time, but gently, like a benediction. You lean back, eyelids heavy, watching the way the firelight flickers across the dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, their shadows dancing softly on the walls. In their simple, fragile presence, you can feel centuries of wisdom breathing through time, that survival is not just about what fills the stomach, but about what nourishes the spirit. The family has learned that flavour is hope, that warmth is faith, that even a single leaf of thyme can remind the weary that life endures. The herbs are not just seasoning, they are prayer, memory, and gratitude dried into form. And as you drift towards sleep, lulled by the sound of the fire and the scent of rosemary in the air, you understand the quiet truth that has carried them through this long, hard winter. Survival is not only about bread or meat or firewood, it is about belief. Belief that spring will return, that sweetness will follow bitterness, that even the humblest meal can taste of grace. The frost will melt soon. The rivers will sing again. And in the smoke of this small cottage, where herbs hang like stars, the first breath of spring already waits. The night outside has turned softer now. The storm is gone, leaving only the faint crackle of frost on the windows and the slow, steady breathing of a world beginning to thaw. Inside the little cottage, the fire burns low, a single thread of light in the dark. The family has drifted into sleep one by one, the children curled beneath their rough wool blankets, the mother's head resting on her folded arms near the hearth, the father still seated upright, his hand resting on an empty cup. You sit quietly with them, the air heavy with the scent of herbs and wood smoke, honey and ash. The embers glow a deep orange, pulsing like a heartbeat. Outside, the snow reflects that same glow, faint and trembling, as if the earth itself is dreaming of warmth. You think back on everything you've seen here, on the black bread so dense it could break a tooth, on the steaming porridge stirred by tired hands, on the salted meat and the jars of white lard, the cheese wrapped in cloth, the single egg glowing like gold in a nest of straw, the spoonful of honey that turned a grey evening bright again. You remember the smell of nuts roasting over fire, the faint perfume of thyme crushed between fingers, the stories whispered as charms against hunger and fear. This, you realize, is what survival truly meant in a medieval winter. Not the grand strength of heroes or kings, but the quiet endurance of ordinary souls who knew how to make life out of almost nothing. Every crumb, every leaf, every drop mattered. Each one held a little spark of faith that the cold would end, that the world would green again. Historians can argue endlessly about what peasants ate, how much bread or beer, how many roots or grains, but no number can measure the courage of waking each morning to face another day of frost. No record can capture the soft laughter around a pot of soup, or the way a mother saves the last slice for her child without a word. You look at them now, asleep in their small home, and you feel a deep tenderness for their world, the simplicity, the hardship, the stubborn hope that glows like the coals before you. There are no luxuries here, no feasts or velvet halls, yet there is peace, quiet and profound. And as the first pale light of dawn begins to touch the snow outside, you feel it too, the stillness, the strength, the fragile beauty of survival. You rise slowly, careful not to wake them, and step outside. The air is cold, but it smells new. Somewhere beneath the frost, the earth is waking. The first bird calls, tentative and thin, but it is enough. You take one last look at the cottage, the smoke curling faintly from the chimney, the herbs swaying gently by the door, and then you walk down the narrow lane, your footsteps soft against the frozen ground. The world is quiet, ancient and kind, and as you leave the village behind, you carry with you the taste of bread and honey, the sound of the fire, and the whisper of rosemary in the air. The dawn comes quietly, almost shy, spreading a faint silver light over the roofs of the sleeping village. The snow glitters like glass dust, untouched except for a few tracks left by a wandering dog and the marks of crows searching for crumbs. The air is so still that you can hear the faint creak of branches far away, the soft sigh of a chimney breathing out smoke. It's a fragile kind of peace, but it feels endless. You stand outside the little cottage you've come to know, watching the thin line of smoke rising into the pale sky. Inside, the family still sleeps, huddled together beneath rough blankets. Their breath rises and falls in rhythm with the last flickers of the fire. Around them, the remnants of survival remain, the empty breadboard dusted with crumbs, the sealed jars of lard, the herbs hanging in the rafters, the faint golden stain where honey once dripped across the table. You realize that these are not just traces of a meal, but relics of devotion, a kind of quiet worship for life itself. In a world where comfort was rare and hunger constant, the act of preserving, cooking, and sharing food was sacred. Theirs was not a life of plenty, but of presence. Every bite, every breath, every spark of warmth noticed and cherished. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls once, slow and deep, its sound carried through the still morning air. It's a signal that the village has survived another night. The people will rise soon, tired, cold, but alive. They will stoke their fires, break what bread remains, feed their animals, and face another day with the same quiet grace that carried them through the storm. Historians might record the kings and the wars, the crowns and decrees, but they will never truly capture this. The small victories of ordinary people who refused to give up. The peasant who found a single egg in the snow, the mother who rationed honey to keep joy alive, the child who laughed over a bowl of porridge thickened with nuts. These are the moments that built the world quietly, beneath the notice of history, yet stronger than any empire's walls. You step forward, brushing snow from the doorframe. The wood is rough under your hand, but warm where the morning sun touches it. The frost melts slowly, tracing thin rivulets that glisten and vanish. Inside, the faint sound of stirring begins. The low murmur of voices waking, a cough, the scrape of a pot against stone, life resuming its rhythm. You smile, unseen, and turn back down the narrow lane. The air smells faintly of smoke, of earth, of thawing pine. Birds begin to sing, a hesitant, broken song but full of promise. You walk past the frozen stream, its surface cracking softly where the water beneath begins to move again. Everything is shifting, quietly, beautifully, towards spring. And as you reach the edge of the village, the sun finally breaks through the clouds, a pale, trembling light that spills over the fields like a blessing. It touches the roofs, the fences, the bare branches, and at last, the road ahead. You take a slow breath and let it fill you, warm despite the cold. Somewhere behind you, the first chimney smoke of morning rises straighter, brighter, like a prayer answered. And you know deep down that you have witnessed something eternal. Not grandeur, not glory, but the endurance of hope itself. So whether you're listening as you drift to sleep, or standing somewhere far away as day begins, carry this image with you, a small fire burning in a snowbound cottage, the scent of time in the air, and a family breathing softly through the last night of winter. By midday, the frost has begun to soften. Meltwater trickles from the eaves of the cottages in thin silver threads, and the snow along the paths turns soft and grainy underfoot. The village stirs to life again. Slow but certain, doors creak open, smoke rises in steady ribbons, and somewhere faintly, a dog barks in the distance as if announcing that the long silence has finally broken. You stand near the old well in the village square. The air is damp but lighter now, touched with the faint scent of thawing earth and wood smoke. A woman passes, her shawl wrapped tightly, a basket balanced against her hip. Inside are the last roots from storage, turnips, onions, maybe a few shriveled apples, and her breath clouds softly as she walks toward the bakehouse. She smiles when she sees you, a small, tired smile that speaks of both weariness and peace. Around her, life has begun to hum again. A man chops wood behind his cottage, pausing between each swing to warm his hands. Children chase one another through puddles, their laughter echoing faintly off the stone walls. The sound feels almost strange after the long quiet of winter, but welcome like a forgotten song finding its way home. Inside one of the homes, the hearth glows bright again. Not the desperate red of survival, but the comfortable gold of habit. Bread is baking in the communal oven. The air carries its rich, nutty scent through the entire village. The loaves are still coarse and heavy, but the aroma alone feels like celebration. It fills the air with the promise of continuity, that even after months of scarcity, the rhythm of life will resume, as it always does. The grandmother hums softly as she kneads dough. Her fingers are stiff, but her motions sure, as though her hands remember better than her mind. On the windowsill, a clay jar of honey gleams faintly, half full. She glances at it, smiles, and drizzles a single golden thread across the dough before setting it to bake. A blessing for the next season. A quiet wish that sweetness will return. Historians may call this the turning point of the year. the first thaw, the end of the hunger months. But to the people who lived it, it was simply the return of breath. The moment when the earth's silence began to loosen its grip. You step outside again, listening to the sound of dripping water, of distant laughter, of ravens cawing from the edge of the forest. The snow is shrinking fast, revealing patches of dark soil beneath. Somewhere beneath that soil lie the first shoots of herbs, still sleeping but ready to rise. The promise of green stirs invisibly beneath your feet. You walk to the edge of the fields where the wind carries the scent of melting ice and distant fires. For a moment you close your eyes and just listen. The faint clinking of tools, the creak of a wheelbarrow, the heartbeat of a village returning to life. And in that quiet you understand the peasants did not just endure the winter, they became part of it. They learned its rhythm, respected its hunger, and met it with patience instead of despair. And when the cold finally began to ease, they emerged not triumphant but grateful. Grateful to see another dawn, to feel the sun again on their faces, to break bread once more without counting the slices. The grandmother steps outside, her apron dusted with flour. She looks toward the fields, her eyes narrowing against the pale light, and whispers something you can't quite hear. A prayer, maybe, or simply a thank you. The bell tolls again, softer this time, and its echo rolls gently across the land. Smoke curls above the cottages, rising into the calm sky like small offerings. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with the scent of bread, earth, and the faint sweetness of thawing air. The world is still cold, but it no longer feels lifeless. Somewhere beneath the surface, everything is moving again. And as you turn to leave the village, your footsteps softer now on the melting snow. You realize that this is how every winter ends, not with triumph, but with quiet renewal, with the slow return of warmth, the steady beat of work, the fragile joy of being alive. So if you're listening now, whether in bed beneath your own blanket or in the gentle noise of your day, take this story with you. Remember the patience of those who came before, the hands that built fires, the hearts that kept faith through darkness. And so the story comes to rest beneath a sky the colour of pearl, where winter's breath fades and the first warmth of spring begins to hum quietly beneath the ground. The cottages stand still but alive, their chimneys breathing thin trails of smoke, their windows fogged with life. Somewhere inside, a child laughs softly in her sleep. A hen stirs. The last log in the hearth collapses with a sigh of ash and ember. You linger a moment longer at the edge of the village, watching the soft curls of smoke drift upward like prayers, each one carrying the same unspoken hope that the next winter will be kinder, the harvest fuller, the nights shorter. The world has not changed much since these people walked it. We still search for warmth, still share what little light we have, still measure comfort in small gestures, a bowl of soup, a quiet word, a shared fire. And though centuries have passed, the truth remains the same. Survival has never been about strength alone, but about kindness, patience, and faith in the slow return of spring. So as you settle deeper into your pillow, or continue your long evening drive, or finish the last of your nightly work, carry this thought with you, the one that kept them alive through frost and famine alike, that even in the darkest winter, warmth always waits, that the simplest meal can hold a miracle. And that somewhere, beneath every snow-covered field, tomorrow is already growing. Good night, traveller. Sleep well, stay warm, and may the quiet resilience of those who came before remind you that no cold lasts forever.